So there's a personality test called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, MMPI. Been around for decades.
I've heard about this test recently because of the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial. I don't know if you've been paying attention to that, but they
I
had
have not been paying attention to it.
They had psychologists on the stand, and they were talking. Apparently, those psychologists did. Again, I'm learning so much from this trial. They did different a battery of tests to diagnose personality disorders. Apparently, there's that systematic way of doing so, and the Minnesota one is one of the ones that's so on or no.
There are a number of statistical properties of any test. They're called psychometric properties. You have validity, you have reliability. There are many different kinds of reliability. They all essentially measure stability. And IQ tests are stable within an individual. There are some longitudinal studies where children were measured at age 11, and again when they were 70 years old, and the two IQ scores are highly correlated with each other. This comes from a fascinating study from Scotland. In the 1930s, some researchers decided to get an IQ test on every single child age 11 in the whole country. And they did. And those records were discovered in an old storeroom at the University of Edinburgh by a friend of mine, Ian Deary, who found the records, digitized them, and has done a lot of research on the people who are still alive today from that original study, including brain imaging research, by the way. Really, it's a fascinating group of people who were studied. Not to get ahead of the story, but one of the most interesting things they found is a very strong relationship between IQ measured at age 11 and mortality. So that, in the 70 years later, they looked at the survival rates, and they could get death records from everybody. And Scotland has universal health care for everybody. And it turned out if you divide people by their age 11 IQ score into quartiles, and then look at how many people are alive 70 years later, I know this is in the book. I have the graph in the book. But there are essentially twice as many people alive in the highest IQ quartile than in the lowest IQ quartile. It's true in men and women.
Interesting.
So it makes a big difference. Now, why this is the case is not so clear, since everyone had access to health care.
Well, there's a lot, and we'll talk about it. Just the sentences you used now could be explained by nature or nurture. We don't know. Now, there's a lot of science that starts to then dig in and investigate that question. But let me linger on the IQ test. How are the tests designed, IQ tests designed? How do they work? Maybe some examples for people who are not aware. What makes a good IQ test question that sneaks up on this G factor measure?
Well, your question is interesting because you want me to give examples of items that make good items. And what makes a good item